Hello everybody and welcome! I'm Justin from Playing Board Games, and yes, I am a little bit sick right now, so I sound a little bit different. But I'm here to talk about a Roland Banks deck, continuing my series of taking an investigator and building not my first version of the deck, but rather a second version of the deck. A version that I normally wouldn't build, so it's kind of getting a little bit tougher when I get to these investigators that I haven't actually that I've played a lot before. It was a lot easier with the Hemlock investigators, but luckily I had a Roland Banks deck that I think actually pops off really well, and I have a gameplay for this deck coming out next week on the channel, so I'm very much looking forward to that because this deck actually exceeded my expectations and it's really cool, and I'm very excited to share it with all of you today. So this deck, Roland Banks Even Science, is cool. This is a dedicated Kluver Roland deck built around the new science cards from the Feast of Hemlock Vale. Yes, that's right. This is a dedicated Kluver deck. We're going to be getting clues, and that's what the main thing that we're going to be doing is. And it's going to be really damn cool. The goal to do this is to assemble various pieces that boost Roland's book and then go nuts with the chemistry set. With additional tools to help card draw, this deck truly shows that science rules. I've been really in love with the chemistry set, and I've been looking for different ways to play it, and I think that this deck is a very fun way to play it, and I think it does that really well. When I first built this deck, I thought it was going to be I thought like the theory was sound, but then I thought, you know what, I really want to play it. I think it could be really good. But this deck actually is a lot better than I thought it was, so why don't we dive in and keep this going. The expansions required over here, you can see them on the list. There's the links down to the video in the video description to these decks as well. We have a pretty basic starting deck here. It actually has a lot of the pieces that we need. Most of our experience upgrades are actually just kind of like luxury or to make our deck more consistent. And because of that, this deck actually functions pretty well at level 0 and carries that into the entire campaign as we go from beginning to end. So that is something really nice. Our final version of our deck, as you can see, where mostly a lot of our experience are going into things that, as I said, make our deck more consistent. We're putting 6 experience into the 6 to stick to the plan. We have a charisma, so we can have both of our allies out in once. We have an ever vigilant 4, just again to make ourselves more consistent, and a stand together to also, you know, kind of make things even better for that as well. The stand together 3s. So this deck's a little bit funky because our game plan is actually relatively low to the ground. Our game plan is use magnifying glasses, use our allies to play chemistry set, and then keep it going. When we have things like steady-handed, we're going to be doing those things to make our decks better and more consistent. So we're actually, as I said, very low to the ground in what we want to be doing. So it's one of those things that, while it feels strange for so much of our deck to be upgraded into just like consistency or economy, it actually is truly going to make our just our deck more consistent. And because we are the main Kluver, we can get things done on the way. And we also have the 1 Roland's 38 special in our deck, which means that if we need to kill things, we can also kill things. But that is not what we are planning on doing things here in this deck. First off, it's built around the science cards. As I mentioned previously, I love chemistry set. It's a very fun card to play with. I think it's playable on its own. I don't think it's great on its own. I think it's fine or good on its own. But when you're able to pair it up with steady-handed, it becomes absolutely insane in the value that it can produce. Because now, if you succeed by 1, you can either gain 2 resources or draw a card when steady-handed is in play, even potentially even healing a horror in the process. Or if you succeed by 3, you can draw a card or get an additional clue. And then chemistry set also has the 0, 2, and 4 built in, which means that when steady-handed is play, if you succeed on a test, you can pretty much, unless you're succeeding by 6, which is, I guess, also kind of a good thing. Unless you're succeeding by 6, you're like gonna hit the value no matter what, which I think is very, very nice. So I think this is actually like a really strong level 0 card. And in this deck in action, I was getting crazy amounts of value from it. Something that's also really nice about steady-handed is that it heals horror, which, as you can see with that spelling error on the thing, is normally a problem for Roland Banks, but when you have Steady Hand in play, your 5 sanity is much less of a problem than it was before. So there is that you can look forward to. Lab Goat is kind of more cute than good, but it's a science card and it's even costed, so that's why we're putting it in this deck to make it really just sing. The game plan in this deck is very simple. I'm just going to go back to the main deck list for a second. You get your chemistry set out, you get your magnifying glasses out, you get your allies out, and then you just go nuts investigating and you have a great time doing it. Looking forward onto some more cards here, we have our allies. So the allies in our deck both boost our book, and with charisma we're getting both of them into play. They also are both cost 4. This deck is on the higher side, that's why we have so much economy, because we're also going to be drawing a lot of cards in this deck and playing a lot of cards. So we want to make sure we actually have the economy to play all these cards because our deck ain't cheap. Alex Luxley's ability is surprisingly relevant. Don't be like me. You're going to see this in the video that's going to be coming out next week if you choose to watch it. Don't forget that when you kill an enemy, you still have Roland Banks' ability. My ability was my card pool and my science cards, so I missed a lot more than I should have on Roland's ability, but that is just like additional clues on top of it. And while, yes, this deck is kind of leaving Roland's ability kind of to the wayside, I don't think you're going to miss it too much, because again, you have your gun that you can use if you want to, and we have some other tools to, like Alice and also Toe-to-Toe, to also help us kill enemies. Jeremiah Kirby is great in our deck because apart from our signature and skills, everything is an even cost card when fully upgraded. Wow, let's go. This means when we play Jeremiah, we're probably going to draw 3 to 5 cards pretty consistently, which is really nice because we then play our cards, play our economy, and then we get to load ourselves back up. Remember, 0 is an even number, which means if you say even with Jeremiah Kirby, you get those cards into your hand. Keeping this going, our first notable upgrade in this deck is going to be Stick to the Plan. I'll get to the upgrades later, but Stick to the Plan is 6 experience, and we kind of want to get it out of the way first. What this is going to do is it's going to make our deck more consistent. 2 cards that we're going to be attaching to our emergency cache are going to be our Ever Vigilant 4 and our Emergency Cache 2. These are 2 cards that I really like committing onto the Stick to the Plan because they are economy cards, and economy cards you want in your opening hand. But when those economy cards don't take up one of the 5 cards in your opening hand, that's even better, and that's why Stick to the Plan is really good. Our third card that we're going to be attaching to it is Task Force in this deck, but again, with these decks, this is kind of like a your mileage may vary sort of thing. You can make changes and alter the deck to better suit your playstyle and what you want to do out of the deck. Consider this a suggestion, a canvas in which you can paint your own beautiful painting on, and other magical stuff like that. Wow, it's beautiful, isn't it? So Ever Vigilance level 4 upgrade is a very powerful card. Generally, you won't need to use all 4 of the reduced cost. You might want to. You also might want to like take a turn to use the Emergency Cache 2 for your first turn, and then use Ever Vigilant on your second turn. That is a pretty fine sequence of play to take if you get more value out of it. But Ever Vigilant 4 can also be used on your other teammates, which is really nice. I really like eCache 2. If you wanted it to be something else, go for it, but I really like it in the upgrades plans, and I like it a lot on Stick to the Plan. Alright, sorry, it's also like 30 degrees in my house right now, so couple that with having a slight cold, and I am just not doing well right now. I feel spiritually great, but physically I am on death's door. Not actually, but I might sound like it to you. I don't know, I'm sounding weird coming out of my own skull right now, so I can't imagine how I'm sounding in the video. Next up, we got some of our remaining economy cards. There isn't too much to say about them other than they all cost 0, so they'll go into our hand. Burning the Midnight Oil and Crack the Case are both reactive economy. This means that you need to spend an action to advance the game, or you are reactive to advancing the game. I really like reactive economy, and luckily that's why Seeker Economy is so good, because their economy is like their good cards. Burning the Midnight Oil and Crack the Case are both entirely reactive. You're advancing the game, they're both entirely active, which means that you're advancing the game as opposed to just taking an action to make economy. Like Emergency Cache, you have to it's like inactive economy. And these are like terms that I'm using to describe it easier. These aren't official terms, but maybe if I say it enough, they will be. Stand Together 3, while not active economy, is still just really powerful because you also can give cards to a teammate, give cards to yourself, give resources to yourself, give resources to a teammate. It's just a lot of value to go around the table, and it's very powerful. Next up, we have Magnifying Glass, which is here to boost our book. I put the experience into it to make it even cost, so we can draw with with Jeremiah Kirby. It makes things more consistent. You're going to want 2 of these in play, and when both of our allies will be investigating at 7, which admittedly, again, is a lot of work. And a Seeker, like Harvey Walters, could probably just do this deck better, right? But, like, that's kind of not the point of this series. This is to explore decks with Roland Banks that are fun and interesting. Once we get to Harvey Walters, we're going to try to see if we can do something fun and interesting. We'll get there when we get there. But I think that this deck actually is a really fun Roland Banks deck, and I had a lot of fun playing with him. And it also mitigates some of his weaknesses, again, going back to his Sanity Problem with Steady Handed. Like, I think this is why that there's like resonance for why this actually can work with Roland Banks. So yeah. Fine-tuning allows us to use our chemistry set multiple times, which is good. We aren't running any additional accessory slots, so our second chemistry set and fine-tuning are quote-unquote dead draws, but you can still commit them or hold them in the chance that your first chemistry set explodes, which can happen. That's one thing you need to be aware of when you are playing with the chemistry set. The 2 shroud locations and auto-fail will pop it. So maybe weigh the pros and cons and don't do it, or live with no fear, because fear is the mind killer, and just use your chemistry set anyway. If it pops, that's okay. You'll have a second one that you'll be able to play and make work as well. Alright, I mentioned previously that Task Force, the third card we put under Stick to the Plan. Task Force actually does a lot in this deck, right? It allows us to grab a clue, move, and use our chemistry set. That's really nice. There's a lot of value to be get out of this, right? So we're spending, like picture this if you will, right? 2 resources. You get a clue your location, the last clue, you crack the case. Wow, I've made so much money, I'm rich, I've paid back my task force and more. Alternatively, maybe you don't, right? You then move to a connected location, you use your chemistry set, and then you succeed by either 0 or 2, or 1 or 3, and you use your steady-handed to do one of them. And then you get either 2 resources, so you replace the task force, or you get a card and you replace the task force in your hand. Like, you replace either the cost or the task force in your hand, and then you also, got action positive out of this. You actually got so much value out of it. So that's why I really like task force in here, and I think it's a really nice third card under Stick to the Plan, and then you can just draw and play the other one. Toe-to-toe is a personal choice here in this deck, but another good option would be Shortcut. Both these cards have their own pros and cons, so I'd grab whichever feels better for you. I like toe-to-toe a lot. I think it's a very good card. It's really nice to just snuff out a 2 health enemy. You can just be like, I got this. You trigger Roland's ability, everyone's happy, everyone claps. Everyone thinks you're really cool and impressive. You also can use it to like fight a 3 health enemy, engage with someone else, and then finish them off with Alex Luxley. And then you can use that to grab a clue as well. So there's a lot of really cool things that you can do. Shortcut is really nice as well, though. Admittedly, I do feel like this deck would also work well with Shortcut. You could also, in theory, replace one of the skills that we're going to be talking about, but I also really think the skills that we have in our deck are really good. They are low to the ground and really just efficient. Deduction gets you more clues, perception gives you a book boost and replaces itself. Again, you could, if you want to make your Jeremiah Kirby more consistent, but I do think that perception and deduction in and of themselves are also just very consistent, very powerful cards, so I wouldn't worry too much about replacing them to make the deck more consistent in that regard. I like them here. I feel like this deck could be better with Shortcut, but I think if you're going to replace something with Shortcut, it probably should be the toe-to-toe. Looking at our upgrade order, as always, adjust this to how you find the deck performs and fill any gaps as needed. Our first upgrade is we want to stick to the plan. I think that is non-negotiable. However, if you look at the bottom of the screen, this deck does well within the thick of it, because you could grab like 2 steady-handed and an ever-vigilant 1 and just like be off to the races a little bit earlier in the start of the campaign. Do it if you want. You could do 2 damage. You could do a damage and a horror, and especially if you're playing the steady-handed, if you want to like be a little bit risky. I think that like you could just do 2 damage to be a little bit safe, but you also could do damage and a horror. You also, if you want to be really freaky, you could do damage to horror, but I don't think that's recommended, especially because cover-up exists in Roland's Bank decks, and you want to be aware of it. Our next batch is, again, steady-handed is probably the first thing that we need after the exceptional, but we also kind of want the ever vigilant on the Stick to the Plan, so that's why that's our next batch after that. Again, we have like our magnifying glasses, our ever vigilant, our charisma. Fine tuning can be up in there as well. This is kind of like, basically like what's important in this deck is you want to grab the Stick to the Plan and the steady handed. After that, everything else is kind of the gravy as you get your experience and where you feel like your deck wants things. Like if you feel like you need more economy, buy your economy first. If you feel like you don't want to lose the breach the door because it actually is pretty playable, like, don't. It's all these things that like you can kind of just decide as things go. So, like, that's kind of where it is. Again, next week we will have a video of this deck in action. It was surprising. It's a pretty cool experience. I had a lot of fun building this deck, and I had a lot of fun playing it, so hopefully you also think it's pretty sweet. Next week, 2 weeks, we're going to be looking at Daisy Walker as we continue going through all of this, as we go through all the Core Set Investigators. Hopefully this Roland Banks deck was pretty cool, and it's continuing the spirit of the series that I know a lot of you like, and I want to just thank you for your support. It means so much to me on this series. So if you like it, please let me know in the comments, because it inspires me to want to continue making these, because I make content for you, and if you are liking the content, I am liking the content. That's how it works. Huge thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel. Thank you so much for everyone who watched this. Again, the links are in the video description. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. And as always, a GG's.